Welcome to Straight Talk. This is Eugene Chang. With us tonight is Mr. Grenville Cross, a senior counsel and professor of law. He was previously the Director of Public Prosecution of the Hong Kong SAR government. Welcome, Grenville.
Thank you very much, Eugene.
Right. Grenville, the title of the show tonight is the Hong Kong judicial system under attack? And you know, this topic has been in the media since last week, where two of the serving non-permanent judges, Lord Robert Reid and Lord Patrick Hutch, resigned from the Court of Final Appeal. This was in the international news and attracted strong responses from the central government, Hong Kong government, and the legal circles. So before we go into that, maybe you can tell the viewers, what are the background of why do we have overseas judges in our Court of Final Appeal?
Well, of course, Hong Kong has always been an international city, and it's always had an international judiciary, both before 1997 and after 1997. And under the basic law, provision is made not only for the maintenance of the common law system, but also for the recruitment of judges from other common law jurisdictions. And in terms of the Court of Final Appeal itself, it was decided before 1997 that overseas judges would be allowed to sit in the Court of Final Appeal, which was frankly quite remarkable, because it certainly doesn't happen in most other common law jurisdictions. It doesn't happen in the United Kingdom. It doesn't happen in the United States. It doesn't happen in Australia, and so on. And when the Court of Final Appeal sits, it has 5 members to hear an appeal. They comprise of the Chief Justice himself, 3 permanent members, and 1 non-permanent member who will often be a judge from an overseas jurisdiction. Now, for that reason, the Chief Justice maintains a list of overseas judges from common law jurisdictions who can sit, when required, as the 5th member of the Court of Final Appeal. Now, most of those judges are actually eminent retired judges, but as a result of an agreement that was reached in 1997 between the then Chief Justice of Hong Kong, Andrew Lee, and the Lord Chancellor of Great Britain, Lord Irvin, it was agreed that the Supreme Court of the United Kingdom would supply 2 judges who were serving judges, whereas the others are retired. They agreed to provide 2 serving judges. And it's now the 2 serving judges who unfortunately have decided to resign.
Right. Grenville, do you see any advantages having an overseas judge sitting on a Court of Final Appeal? Especially, I mean, it was understandable at the time of handover, but after 25 years, do you still see the advantages?
Well, we of course remain plugged into the traditions of the common law world. And I know from speaking to the judges themselves that they sometimes find it very helpful to have a very experienced judge, a common law judge from another jurisdiction, coming to sit with them, because they're often able to provide new insights and valuable experience, which didn't necessarily exist already here in Hong Kong. And on top of that, I think that it reassures the general public, because it serves to underline the independence of the judiciary, and it also inspires confidence in the business community, because they can see that there's a fully functioning and independent court resolving disputes as and when they arise.
So you can say we have run an extra mile to prove to the rest of the world that we're open to overseas non-permanent judges. But I understand that we also have local Hong Kong non-permanent judges. So do we use them as well, or we just only use overseas judges?
Yes, there are in fact two panels of non-permanent judges. The first one comprises 4 very senior retired Hong Kong judges. And as I say, the second one is the overseas list, which after the 2 resignations means there are now 10 judges left, coming from the United Kingdom, Canada, and Australia.
Right. Grenville, let's turn to the situation at hand. The 2 judges that have resigned are both the President and the Deputy President of the UK Supreme Court. Do you think they have resigned on their... Did they resign independently, or they were recalled back by the UK authorities? What is this actual situation?
Well, I have no doubt that they've been placed in a very difficult situation. You have to remember that only in August of last year, Lord Reid conducted a review, and as a result of that review, he decided that he and Lord Hodge would remain in the Court of Final Appeal, and he said at the time that the judgments of the court were consistent with the rule of law. So what has changed in the last 8 months? It's certainly not the national security law, which the British politicians have been suggesting, because the national security law was in place last August when Lord Reid took his decision to stay, and indeed had been enacted 15 months previously. So clearly something else is going on here. And it is obviously concerning that pressures have been brought to bear. And indeed, the Hong Kong Watch, which is an organisation in London that monitors Hong Kong affairs and has the ear of the British government and has a patron in Lord Patton, the former governor of Hong Kong, it said last week that it understood that the two judges had been recalled. That's their word, not mine. Recalled. So it would seem, if that's right, that the judges themselves had very little choice in the matter, and that they were told, in effect, that we want you to go. And of course, the British Foreign Secretary, Liz Truss, and the British Justice Secretary, Dominic Raab, have both made it very clear that their view is that the judges should withdraw. And they would doubtless have communicated this view to Lord Reid in the meeting that took place recently, and he was clearly left with very little choice. It was a very difficult position for him to have been placed in, and we must all feel great sympathy for him.
Right. So, Granville, our Chief Executive, Mrs. Carrie Lam, actually accused Britain of undermining our judicial independence and said the move was a political planned one. And in your opinion, does this amount to an attack on the judicial system?
Well, it's certainly not strengthening the judicial system, is it? It's most unfortunate. It's not about substance. According to what the Foreign Secretary Liz Truss has said, it's all about image. They don't think that judges should be in a place and working in a situation where the British government dislike the government's policies. Well, these should be completely irrelevant to the work of a judge. A judge operates independently within the judicial system. So long as the judge is able to do that without undue pressure or without any other type of problems, and is able to make decisions independently, then everything should be absolutely fine. Right. And instead of urging these two judges to resign, they should have been urged to remain, as indeed the decision that they took last August, because that will maintain and uphold the rule of law. And forcing them out in this way obviously does not further that key objective.
Right, Granville, so from what we gather, at least on the surface, it looks like the UK politics is actually influencing the judiciary. So how can a UK, which is a common law system that have been originated there, how can they claim they have judicial independence?
Well, it is obviously very, very worrying, but they've taken the view that it's undesirable to have two serving senior British judges sitting in the Court of Final Appeal, because they happen to disagree with some of the government's policies. This doesn't make sense at all. If they said we don't think the judges should sit anymore because the Court of Final Appeal is no longer independent, or because you might face political pressure in the Court of Final Appeal when you make judgments, then you could understand if they said they should withdraw. But that is certainly not the case. Lord Reid has actually gone out of his way to emphasize that the courts in Hong Kong are performing to a high standard, an internationally recognized standard, in upholding the rule of law.
In your opinion, why would UK want to undermine our legal system? Is there a bigger part of narrative there? What is your opinion? Well,
certainly some people in the United Kingdom have been trying to undermine Hong Kong, regarding it as a way of striking at China itself. This, of course, is the policy of the Five Eyes partners and indeed the United States. The United States, of course, cut off Hong Kong's trade preferences, suspended extradition treaties and so on, and sanctioned Hong Kong officials. And for its part, the United Kingdom, most unfortunately in 2020, tried to undermine the criminal justice system by, for example, cutting off weaponry and quite crowd control equipment to the police force, which needed them for anti-riot duties, by suspending the extradition treaty between United Kingdom and Hong Kong. And of course, that meant that fugitives could flee and not be brought back for trial. And this is part of that pattern. So now pressure is being placed on the Court of Final Appeal itself.
Right. Granville, just now you mentioned the word anti-China sentiment, but if you look at it recently, there were two reports, one from the UK, the 6-monthly report on Hong Kong, and from the US, the 2022 Hong Kong Policy Act reports that also just been released. So it seems like Hong Kong is under scrutiny. So is Hong Kong also being the target?
Well, quite clearly, those reports, particularly the United Kingdom report, which comes out every 6 months, they used to be valuable and balanced reports. but now they're highly prejudiced and designed to further the foreign policy objectives of the Five Eyes partners. And obviously the view is taken that if they can put Hong Kong in a bad light, then this will reflect badly on China itself. So it's part of the strategy, in fact, to undermine China and to try and hinder its progress in world affairs.
Granville, just a short question just before the break. As you know, with all that has happened, practically, firstly, would it affect our running of the judicial system with the two judges resigning? Secondly, certainly it is also, someone said, is also from a perception issue. How can we tackle that?
Of course, it's only the two serving judges who've been pressurized into resigning. The other non-permanent judges have all indicated that they plan to stay. That's 9 out of the 10, and I hope the 10th will soon make up his mind. And they have indicated that not only will they stay, but they regard the independence of the judiciary as fundamental, and that they regard the judiciary as doing good work in upholding the rule of law and holding the executive to account, and that they will continue with their support of the Court of Final Appeal, which is obviously very good news for everybody.
Right, Granville, let's take a break and don't go away. Thanks for staying with us. We have been talking to Mr. Granville Cross about whether Hong Kong's judicial system is under attack. So Granville, before the break, we talked about the background of what has happened, and I'm saying one of the concern of the Hong Kong community is whether this will affect the international confidence in our judiciary. So what can be done about this?
Well, we obviously have to give the Court of Final Appeal all the support that it can. The government, as it always does, must speak out on the judge's behalf whenever there are threats to its independence, as they've been doing over the last week. And the legal profession, of course, must also, as it has been doing over the last week, must announce very clearly to the world that everything is fine in Hong Kong, that the rule of law is going from strength to strength, and that the future is rosy. We know, as I say, that the bulk of the Court of Final Appeal's non-permanent judges from overseas are going to stay, and that is a very good message going forward. And also, at the same time, we can rely increasingly on local judges and lawyers, of whom there are many very capable now, to start perhaps assuming a greater role in judicial affairs.
Right, Granville, one of our lawmakers, Solicitor Maggie Chan, actually said that the resignation of these two non-permanent judges will actually be beneficial to safeguarding Hong Kong's rule of law because it will remove any foreign political interference to our judiciary. Do you agree?
Well, that might be a bit strong because judges, of course, always take a judicial oath whereby they undertake to administer the law impartially, without fear or favour, without self-interest or deceit. And I'm sure that all the Court of Final Appeal judges, past and present, strictly adhere to that. They decide cases on their merits in light of the legal arguments. But it's always sad when very experienced judges do depart. But on the other hand, I'm sure that so far as the Court of Final Appeal is concerned, this will just be water off the duck's back, and that the Court of Final Appeal will emerge stronger from the experience. And it's very good indeed that the other overseas judges are holding their ground. They're not going to be pressured. They're going to contribute to Hong Kong. And so by local judges and overseas judges cooperating together in pursuit of shared criminal justice and indeed other objectives, I'm sure that our legal system will actually be strengthened in the years to come.
Right, Granville, you just mentioned that the 9 out of the 10 remaining judges have decided to stay, and one is is pending on his decision. But how confident are we that these judges will not be persuaded by their own countries to leave our system?
Well, they are men and women of great integrity. 2 of them are actually the predecessors of Lord Reed as presidents of the Supreme Court. So these are people of the highest caliber. And they're also Chief Justices from Australia and the former Chief Justice of Canada. And so these are people of great stature in the legal world. And they will know exactly how to handle any unfair pressures that are placed upon them. They will exercise their own judgment in the matter. And it's very good news that they have decided to stick with Hong Kong. And indeed, as you know, 5 of the British judges issued a statement last week indicating their commitment to the rule of law here. So I don't think we have anything to worry about, and the Court of Final Appeal will take these developments in its stride, and that the future is actually very positive.
Granville, let's look at some of the reasons for their resignation. As we read in the papers, they said one of the main reasons is because of the implementation of national security law in Hong Kong, and they accused the Hong Kong government of depriving the people of freedom of expression or political freedom. Are there any basis of it from a legal point of view?
Well, assuming for one moment that those things were true, that would make it all the more important for the overseas judges to stay. Liz Truss, the British Foreign Secretary, should have said that there are these dangers in Hong Kong. We want to protect Hong Kong from them, and therefore it's absolutely essential for Lord Reid and Lord Hodge to remain. But of course, because politics are at play, that view wasn't taken at all. But the views that you mention, of course, are frivolous and political in nature, unreliable and biased, and they could be set to one side. You mentioned the UK report that came out last week, the 6th monthly report, and that made, for example, it shot through with distortions and inaccuracies. But, for example, it made no reference to the fact that in the national security law is actually human rights heavy. And in its opening principles, it makes absolutely clear that human rights are to be protected in the application of the national security law, that the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, which applies to Hong Kong and which contains all the fair trial guarantees that suspects enjoy when they go to trial, this shall be embodied in the application of the national security law. It also states unequivocally that the principle of the rule of law shall be protected and respected in the application of the national security law, and that criminal suspects will enjoy such things as the right to presumption of innocence, the right to legal defence, and so on. None of this was mentioned at all, which is incredible. And one can only assume that the object was to place Hong Kong and indirectly China in the worst possible light, which is why only half the picture was disclosed. Right. So we must always be prepared to call out hypocrisy like this and to expose it.
Right. Another concern that was raised up was the CE was allowed to pick a panel of designated judges for the national security law related cases. Do you think this concern is valid as well?
Well, obviously this has been misrepresented enormously around the world, and the impression has been given that the chief executive selects a particular judge for a particular case, which of course is nonsense. The chief executive knows very few, if any, of the judges who conduct the trials. So she can designate people, and a list is maintained by the judiciary. And then it's for the judiciary itself to decide which judge should handle which case. And it will be done, I understand, on rotation. And of course, there's nothing strange about that at all, because particular judges are already assigned to particular types of cases if they have a certain expertise. Some judges will handle criminal law cases, some will handle judicial review cases, some will handle family law cases, and it's only natural that some judges will handle national security law cases because of their expertise. So this is entirely natural, and it's a motive for politicking for people to suggest there's anything to be concerned about.
Right, Granville, since we know that you're coming to the show, one of the viewers wanted me to ask you this question. That's something that you have touched on earlier. Lord Robert Reid actually wrote that while they couldn't endorse the Hong Kong government, but they continue to express confidence in the Hong Kong judiciary. I mean, can you comment on this statement? Because it is quite a contradictory statement, because the judiciary should be independent of the government. This is what the viewer asked, and I'd like to ask you for your opinion.
Well, it was slightly disappointing to see that Lord Reid say that, but he clearly had to provide some sort of justification for what is frankly a volte-face. As I said earlier, he decided only 8 months ago that he would stay on the Court of Final Appeal, notwithstanding the national security law, and yet 8 months later, he suddenly changed his mind. And this, of course, has left the judiciary in the lurch, and this had to be explained somehow. And it's clear that the words that he used are almost identical to those which the Justice Secretary, Mr. Raab, and the Foreign Secretary, Ms. Truss, used in order to justify the decision. But as I say, it's very important that judges do not blur the distinction in their roles, and provided they are able to do the jobs with which they are entrusted as judges, then that should be the limit of their concern. Obviously, as I said earlier, if they are interfered with in any way, or if their court loses its independence, the situation would be entirely different, and everyone would understand if they walked away. But Lord Reid has gone out of his way to say that nothing like that is happening, and he has confidence in the courts of Hong Kong and their ability to uphold the rule of law. So that's what people should be focusing on.
Right. Granville, last week, since we mentioned so much about the national security law, last week Mr. Alan Seaman was our guest, and he commented that NSL that was in Hong Kong was the best thing that can ever happen to Hong Kong. Do you agree to that statement as well?
Well, obviously, it resolved the huge difficulties that Hong Kong was facing in the year 2019 through to 2020, restored normality and peace to the city, as well as decency. There was a concerted attempt to overthrow the one country, two systems policy by people who were hostile to Hong Kong internally and supported by people elsewhere. And this was intended to harm China itself. So the national security law, as I say, has restored normality, and that is a very good thing. And the only regret actually is that Hong Kong was unable to enact its own national security law back in 2003. Because anti-China elements, even at that stage, whipped up opposition to it, and the bill was ultimately withdrawn. Had that bill not been withdrawn and been implemented at the time, many of the problems that we saw thereafter could have been avoided. So with the national security law, it's quite clear that one country, two systems is now safe, that it will proceed smoothly for the next 25 years, up to 2047, which is the sell-by date of the basic law's guarantees. And hopefully it will ensure that the present system can endure after 2047, which would be marvelous for Hong Kong.
Right. Granville, as the title of the show suggests, is our judicial system under attack? And the answer from you is yes. And you just mentioned about, actually recently, Xia Baolong, the director of Hong Kong Macau's Affairs in the State Council, stressed that Hong Kong is to remain a free port with the capitalist system for 50 years, and the common law system is going to not change after 2047. So do you think this is enough to give confidence to the rest of the world that rule of law is here to stay in Hong Kong?
Well, I certainly hope it will be. The common law and our legal system has been fundamental to Hong Kong's success throughout its history. And provided it is protected, provided that outside elements that try to weaken it through pressure on judges or otherwise do not succeed. And I'm sure this will give confidence to investors, to business people, to people planning to set up enterprises here or invest here going forward. So I would say that all the signs are now positive, that the problems of the recent past have been resolved, that the judges are standing firm, including the overseas judges, and there's absolutely no reason at all why Hong Kong should not make a success of the future, just as it's made a success of its past.
Right. That's all the time we have, Granville, and many thanks for Mr. Cross for coming to share with us his views of whether the Hong Kong judicial system is under attack and the way forward. Stay healthy and have a good week.